Hey guys, this is Kirob speaking, and today we are going to take a look at the upcoming features for the Light Campaign v4.1. We've just released the Light Campaign v4.0 into the public main branch after it having spent way too long in the open beta phase, but it was completely worth it because we ironed out so many little flaws, bugs, and yes, we've added so much polish and even new features during that phase. It was absolutely worth it. It feels like a super solid foundation for what we are going to do next, and that would be the Light Campaign v4.1. I've made a video before which you, if you haven't watched it yet, should watch, and that is the Development Outlook 2020 Plus video, where I'm going through all the different versions of the Light Campaign, like basically a series of discussions on the major milestones within automation before it is considered done. Light Campaign v4.1 is one of those milestones, and it was basically listed as having four main features: a new sales model, improved dealerships, improved hub calendar functions, and manual control of sales prices. But that really doesn't sound that that intriguing to anyone who plays Sandbox or mainly uses Sandbox to export to BeamNG. And I can assure you though that there will be quite a bit of that going on in Light Campaign v4.1. So let me expand on that. And you guys who are just interested in Sandbox, you should stay, because there's some good stuff in here. Please note though that everything I'm going to say in this video is preliminary, and what actually then will make it into the update is probably not going to be 100% overlap with what is being presented in here. What I'm going to do next is go through blocks of features. And that is first the campaign features, or more campaign-focused features, and then Sandbox, then we have some art stuff, and then also BeamNG stuff. So let's start out with the campaign features. On top of the list is a new sales model, and that has been talked about so much. You can even find ancient videos of me talking about this. If you just search the channel for the 99 trim problem, you will find discussion on the video and on this video regarding the sales model, and the solution to that problem back then is that new sales model, and it has been worked out in spreadsheet for many years. Just needs to finally be implemented, and that's what we're going to do next. The benefits of this new sales model is that it can actually simulate a market where there's more than just one company, because the current sales model is based on there is a company and then there are competitor cars like floating around, and your cars are just being compared to that, and only there's an imaginary slice of market you get depending on your awareness, and then you can sell into that slice. That is not really how it should be working. And you will probably see with this new sales model quite a few improvements in its behavior in sales. What it will be doing instead is properly evaluate the lineup of each company for each demographic and see how many people would be interested in looking at those cars. Then they would filter through that company and see if there may be other trims they are more interested in, and then drop out or buy, and then repeat that for next month. And not all people filtering into that will come out as buyers either. So that system is a lot more powerful in getting the correct market shares in the market, and market shares for the first time, because market share is something that we were not able to give you before because of this fake slice of the pie which you're having in the current version of automation. So it will be a more proper, let's say, not proper, it depends on how you view these things, a business simulation where you can up your market share, and we can actually show you your market share, and all those little things you're doing, like upping your reputation and so on, will probably have a good effect on your market share. So it will not only be selling cars because numbers, but rather there will be the groundwork laid out for actual competition. Now that will be interesting. Also, that allows us to better implement dealerships, because right now they are just based on that magic piece of the pie, and now we can base them on one more thing, and that is that you have a maximum throughput with these dealerships. And that would be either market share or a fixed amount of cars per month. And whatever is the lower one, of course. And that could be quite interesting. Also, this ties into one more thing that is on this list. We're coming to that later, though. That's just keep in mind that there's more to dealerships. Improved hub calendar. Yes, we do want. We already have a work in progress version of this feature, and that one should include a list of your engine projects as well, so that you have them in there too. And it needs to be an optional pop-out full screen mode, so that you have everything in the same view and really can plan out. The next one is interesting because so many people rightly have said that, oh well, it takes so long to get started. And we agree, that has always been a problem. And I think what a good cheap way of getting around this, which is easy to implement too, is that you just say, oh well, during the war your engineers were sitting on their fat asses and they were working out your first design, which you are designing right now. Yes, so just cut 36 months off the engineering time, and that is where we are going to start. I think that is a pretty valid approach and should get your cars out 3 years earlier. And then any remnant of that time is of course attached onto the end or onto the start, and you still have to wait. And we are not quite sure what to do with the earlier months if you then oh well, it would cost you less, that's for sure. But anyway, I think that's a pretty good change. It's easy to implement too. So you get started basically 3 years earlier, where you don't have as much. You're more competitive right away. You don't have as high opportunity cost for your first car, and that should make starting more solid. Of course, also in the hub calendar and so on, we want to implement manual sales prices. And that will be an interesting thing, especially with the new dealerships. We're thinking about some interesting mechanics for also having dealership pricing, and the dealerships have a margin and dealership happiness. So if you're selling cars to a dealership, they do have a margin, so that we don't have this weird thing where, well, your car starts at 30,000, that's the base price, but within 6 months it was sold out at like 68,000. That's just very unrealistic, and takes the immersion out of it, because that's really not how the real world works. So we want to get closer to reality with the sales prices, and the manual settings certainly are part of that. Then also closer to reality, overdrawn account loans. You're no longer able to just be 250 million in negative and have no consequences for it. That's slightly ridiculous. So that's something we're going to address. And oh yes, a much requested feature which I think will be super handy is to be able to see car bodies that are not yet unlocked but will unlock in the next X years. That will be handy to see, so that you don't have to memorize or write down from different games that you where you've played, or from Sandbox, where you look through the list when a certain car body that you really want to use unlocks. In this mode, you will see future unlocks as well as your currently available ones, and in the R&D panel, those unlocks would show as well. Then we want to implement factory deterioration into the company valuation. If you have, let's say, not properly maintained your factories, then probably they are not quite as worth as much as the valuation currently says it is. So yeah, running down your factories will have negative consequences on your evaluation, and thus how much you can loan and so on. Another big thing that we want to add, which will really streamline the campaign flow, is that you can add factories to an existing production without doing a facelift of that production. I think that is a big change. That should really change things around. So you can just go ahead and like sign off your factories you already have with a new project, and then once you see, oh wow, this car is doing really well, I want to add a new medium factory to this, but I don't want to facelift it. Yeah, you can then go into the factory overview from the main hub, create a new factory, choose a tooling for the factory, so as in to assign that factory a car to produce, and then it will start producing that car as soon as it is done. One easy thing to do for changing difficulty around, and this is something that so many people seem to be struggling with, engineering times, contrary to the belief of some, are pretty realistic. And yeah, I think we do want to give them the option to change them if they want to. So it's pretty simple on our end, because it's just a multiplier, right? And why not give the player the option of having engineering times maybe between 25% of the original up to 150, and ramp up difficulty that way. Maybe you're playing in a world where your engineers all are shit and really slow, so set it to 150 and see what you can get out there and still try to compete. That will be interesting. Anyway, the one thing on the economy side that we want to change is, or rather in this campaign setup also, is that we want to implement the market volatility finally, so that you can select to use markets that are not as up and down all the time as they are currently, or make them even wilder. That is not supposed to be missing in any Tycoon game, of course, is a yearly finance report, and I think we are going to implement this as an optional pop-up that if you click on it in the news items, then it pops up with your yearly report, but otherwise just disappears. So you have the option of, well, you're getting notified, here's your yearly report, and that's fine. No, of course, not as a pop-up, but rather in the list of news, so you can keep an eye on how your company has been doing during that year. One thing that is pretty unrealistic at the moment for the logistics of things is that there is no shipping costs between regions. So if you're producing engines in one region and you're producing the car in another that uses that engine, there is no shipping between those. So your car still sells for, let's say, +0. But in future this is going to change to like 250 per engine transport and 500 per car transport. And this additional costs can be baked into the dealership margins as well, so that they have less margin and turn unhappy if you're not careful. So yeah, transportation costs, they do affect your margins instead of the end user price. And thus you will want to up the end user price if that is the case. And then, yeah, I think this will play a bit better, because currently it's just too easy to outsource to Ahana and then just smile all the way, even though you should be incurring quite steep costs for the transportation of all the things. We do want to improve the factory status and stats panel a bit, where the factories are summarized. It's not quite as clear as it could be at the moment. And what's the next item? Also, that's a small one. The body age penalty has been implemented in the game before, but hardly anyone notices really, and that is because we have tuned it down a lot, because there were so few bodies available in the game since like 2 years ago or something. There were so few bodies, but that situation has changed quite dramatically. I think we are close to 1,000 bodies now. So and that means that we now can crank up the penalties, the body age penalties, which just symbolize, oh, this car starts to look old, it's an outdated design. We can crank up those penalties, but they should be cranked up in a careful way. I'm not going to go all the way up now, because we still have a few holes in markets here and there, And remember that the body penalties are dependent on how prestigious a category of a demographic is. It's for each demographic it's different. A hypercar demographic really wants to have the latest, and their fall off is pretty quick, while a van category like a delivery, they don't care. They don't care if their car looks 10 years old. What does its job, right? That's fine. But one thing that is quite noticeable, if you look at the years of design changes since 1940 in cars in general, is that cars since the 2000s, roughly, didn't change that much. Like, if you compare a 2010s car with a 2020s car, there's not much difference. Like, slightly different headlights, and you could basically sell it as a 2020 car. But if you compare 70s cars to 80s cars, or 50s cars to 60s cars, holy, that is a big difference. So yeah, no, I think that is something that needs to be considered in that. Also, we want to provide you access to the forecaster during engineering and production, as well as its current use. And that is such that you can see how the forecast is panning out versus reality. That will be an interesting thing to look at. I think a small but quite interesting change will be that we introduce a patriotism bonus, and that would be for producing locally. And that could affect the company reputation in that region, which then again affects your desirability in that region. So if you're producing your cars in a certain region of the world, in a certain country, then that country will view you more positively than other countries around where you have no production, where you're just exporting to. Then we have some more UI changes, and that would be to just smoothen out the transitions in the main hub, so that everything is preloaded. We can do it a bit smoother instead of just chopping between them, and so to make it all feel like one piece. And we do want to implement some proper project warnings for financial aspects, the factory setup, engineering, and so on, because that is something that can catch people out quite a lot. So if there's some nasty, shouty exclamation mark somewhere, then maybe people will take care a bit more and see what's actually about to explode in their company. The list for Sandbox is quite a bit smaller, but I think you will love those changes. So here we go. What we have in the works is a big suspension and chassis rework, and that is fixing all kinds of issues, not only with the visual art side of it, and the morphing of it as it adapts to your settings, but also fixes our eternal problem with ride height, that some cars, like the LMP 80s body, for instance, are just like monster trucks. It looks like it's still 20 centimeters above the ground if you have it at the lowest setting. These changes will make it such that you can have proper low cars if you want to, and that look low as well. That will be a big change, and it will look good as well. And I should add to this list, I don't think it's in here, car hoist. Yes, we already have a working version. It's mostly working version, looking really nice. So you will be able to lift up your car and put it down on the ground again, and so on, in the design room too. So that's pretty nifty. Anyway, ability to turn on lights. Yes, you read that right. Hype. That is something, I think that alone would satisfy most Sandbox mainly players. Like if that functionality came on, you'd no longer need mods that just have an on version of that light, but rather you can switch them on and off. And not only that, but they would be grouped, and grouped such that you can turn on the headlights, you can turn out the fog light, turn off the fog lights or on, and brake lights and blinkers and all that stuff. And what we are going to get to, that also then applies to your export into BeamNG. Yes, very nice. That's some spoiler for later, because we're going to talk about BeamNG stuff as well. But I think that is a really cool functionality that so many have been asking for, and we are going to see some amazing cars from that, I'm sure. Then, implement Sandbox companies. Yes, they are coming back. I think they were a thing in Light Campaign V2, was it? In that version of the key engine? We had something like this. Basically a folder structure which allows you to sort cars into different companies, in air quotes. And the default remains the Sandbox company, so if you don't care, you're not going to be affected by this. But if you do care and want to structure your Sandbox life, then this is the tool for you. Also, we want to bring back the car and engine generation AI for standard Sandbox play, so that you can quickly just, if you've made a car but you only care about the visual design, just throw something in there. You can just click and create an engine with the AI, have that done instantly, more or less, and there you go. It's working, you know it's working. Or if you don't quite know how to build an engine, that is also, or a car, you can look at what the AI thinks is a good car for that market. You know how you can compare engines to each other, their stats, and see where they are better and worse, even the graphs? Well, that is coming for the cars, minus the graphs, because that would be horrendous. Like, imagine an auto 10-gear gearbox being compared to an auto 9-gear gearbox, and all in the same graph. That's a few too many lines. So yes, car stats will be comparable by just picking a car to compare to. Yeah, good functionality, just a little addition, should be good. Then we have a change that might be quite interesting. The roof type of a convertible, if it's automatic or manual, if it's completely removable or fixed, and yeah, those kinds of things. There's some room on the interior tab, interior and entertainment tab, and I think we are going to add that there. Just a quick choice. If you've selected a convertible, then you would have some additional options. And this next item should have been in the campaign. I don't know what it's doing here. Hello there. We do want to have a breakdown of sales per demographic and how they overlap, so that you can see if you're stealing market share from yourself, so to say, if you're overburdening a certain sector with stuff and not really getting much out of it. This would be a useful tool to use in your campaign lineups. And then we have some, just in general, art changes, but also a bit more than that, also miscellaneous. And apart from the suspension chassis rework, which also is gameplay relevant, as we've talked about already, engine visualization customization is back, or will be back. It will be back. There will be a separate tab in the engine designer where you can customize your engine. You can paint the block, not manually, but you can pick a color and so on. And you can change the valve covers, and maybe even a full engine cover. That might also be a thing, but that's more experimental at this point. Then another big change that many have been asking for, which is a small change, or relatively small change for us, but transparent glass coming to the cars if you want to, and you can tune the transparency. And I think that is something that many, especially the modders and mod-using people, will be quite fond of. And depending on the angle of the shot, it will just look really good. So yes, that is going to come into 4.1. Then, yeah, two things that we're going to introduce, also a bit along those same lines, modding and so on, is 3D fixtures. And like properly supported 3D fixtures, like stamping seats into the car and so on. That would be quite nice to have. And then photo scene props, fixtures basically that you can place freely in the environment. I think we can see a lot of interesting things with this. Not only walls of dick that are just outside the range of the camera, but also some proper nice stuff like let's say you have a photo shoot with your new sports car GTR trim, and you have some stacks of tires, tire wall there, and you have some barrels, and oh yeah, you can turn full gangster and have burning barrels in the background or something like that. I'm sure modders will use that stuff and just lap it up and create some awesome stuff we've never thought about. Anyway, we also do want to add, to make your lives easier designing this stuff, we want to add custom fixture paints as miscellaneous slots. This should really be in Sandbox though, not so much in the art department. Yeah, this list is a bit messed up, sorry about that. So that basically we're just going to have, say, 10 slots that are on the car but not really on the car, that you can fill with custom colors so that you can use them in fixtures. And that has been something that many people were asking for, and we wanted to implement a proper, in air quotes, system. But this seems to be a hacky way that is really easy for us to do and basically accomplishes 95+% of the job of what you are asking for. So custom paint slots that are not on the car, so that you don't have to bother with that, but that you then can pick within the fixture itself to be used. And if we get around to it, we would also like to have a highlighting of the section of the car that is going to be painted for the selection you're currently making. That will be quite handy to see, because sometimes they are a little difficult to determine. Like, you change a paint just to see what is going to change, and that's not really how a UI should interact with you. And then we have a few beam changes, and those are still a bit in the air. Like here and there we're going to pick pieces, so they're a little vague. Definition of what a headlight and brake light is, as we've talked about already, we are going to define that within automation itself. So exporting that will then be possible, and you should have properly set up light groups within Beam then as well. And there's quite a list of various little changes for the exporter, additions, like within gearing and all kinds of stuff that we are looking at implementing. Can't really give any specifics at this moment, but we are looking into potentially easy-ish additions that have come to that will be easy to make for the exporter at this point. We are going to investigate if there's a better solution to currently the weight in fixtures in Beam. Currently they need to have a specific weight, which is pretty heavy and makes fixture-intensive cars really heavy. And that changes their behavior in Beam, of course, and that's not something we necessarily want. So we are going to investigate that further and see if we can change that, or at least mitigate some of that somehow. And also we are going to investigate if we can get metallic paint working. I think there's a mod out there for BeamNG that allows metallic paints. So we are going to take a look at if that is something we could get across into Beam as well. And then, if we get around to it, why not add horns to exported cars? Like, not bull horns, but rather the toot ones. So I think that should be it, really. Not all these changes might make it across into the final version of that Light Campaign v4.1 update, but these are all the things that we are considering for now, and I thought I'd give you a closer look at that. And also, I'm pretty sure that you non-campaign playing people are pretty happy about that this is not a pure campaign update. Would be a little boring. We try to always make the patches, the bigger updates, a little bit for everyone, so that it's not too stale in the meantime. Anyway, that should be it. I hope you are looking forward to this update just as much as we are, and hope you enjoy, and see you guys next time.